Hello everyone, this is going to be a tutorial on how to assemble a transmission on a Traxxas 1/16 E-Revo. So the tools you're going to need to do this are the 2mm wrench, a 2.5mm wrench, and a 1.5mm hex wrench. You're also going to need this wrench, which is included with the car. The first step is going to be to assemble the transmission. Now, if it's not already assembled, what you need to do is slide this large gear onto the shaft that it slides onto. Then you just put the screw in, and make sure to line it up. Then, once you feel it go in, tighten it with the 1.5mm wrench. Now, in my experience with the wrench tends to get stuck, and if it does, all you need to do is just pull it off with some pliers. So now you have that gear assembled. Now you're going to take one half of the transmission casing, the one that has the larger slot recessed, and slide this gear in. But you need to make sure it spins freely, which means that this side that's sort of beveled down needs to go in first, and it'll spin fairly freely. Now, the next thing you need to do is to take this metal gear and put the larger of these two gears on, and all you need to do for that is to take the hex and slide it on. So what you need to do then is put that into the same part of the transmission casing, metal part first, and it will mesh with the larger gear, just like this. Now the third part to the transmission is this shaft, which will run out to the spur gear and slipper clutch. And what you need to do to assemble this is you need to slide this hex on, with this hex gear on, and put it in just like that, with the threaded end going out first. Then what you need to do is slide the transmission casing over it, and it will snap into place, and if everything's going right, it will spin. The next step is going to be to tighten the transmission casing. Now, I'm going to be using one metal screw, which requires a screwdriver, but that will not come with the car, so you can stick with the 2mm wrench for this whole thing. So, what I like to do is get it started a little bit, then take the screwdriver and just tighten it down all the way. But don't tighten it too much, as the casing can separate and break. And just put the other one in, tighten it a little bit, and tighten it all the way, but ensure that it does not crack. So you should have 2 screws at the bottom of this. Now the next part is going to continue tightening this, but you need to put this blue aluminum motor mount on, and it should fit just like this. Then you can start all 4 screws that go into it right into the transmission and tighten them with the 2mm wrench. So the next step is to assemble the slipper clutch. Now you're going to need to make sure you have the spur gear that you want to put on. I'm putting on the 45 tooth, but you can put on any size you want. And what you want to do is just put the bearing into the side that will face out on the spur gear, just like this. Now you want to take the shaft that's running out of the transmission on the top with the threaded end and very carefully slip this small pin into the hole on the shaft. Now you may need to use some pliers, preferably needle nose, not slip joint like I just used, to get this pin in. But you should make sure that it has approximately the same amount of metal sticking out on both sides, just like this. The next thing is to take this piece, and you'll see it has a hole in it with sort of a line running through it, and that line is going to match up right on the pin when you slide it on, just like this. The next thing to do is to install the slipper clutch pad onto the back of the spur gear, and it'll fit in just like this. So what you want to do is to slide the spur gear on just like this. The next thing to put on is the spring. And once you have that on, you can put on this small nut. And what you need to do is thread the 1.5 millimeter hex wrench through the other end of the shaft with the clutch on it, so that it won't move when you have to tighten it. Then you use this end of the wrench and you tighten it down. Now you'll first need to tighten this down all the way, but you definitely shouldn't run with it set like that. Once it's tightened down all the way, you should turn it a quarter to a half turn out. If you have a quarter turn in, it won't slip as much, and a half turn it'll slip quite a bit more. So I'm going to do mine a quarter turn, but adjust yours to whatever setting you want. Alright, there we go. The slipper clutch is now installed. Now what you want to do is bring the actual car back and flip it over. So now you want to take this small half shaft that runs out of the transmission into the front, and you're going to match it up with the correct slot in the front of this drive shaft. This is pretty difficult, so if it takes you a while, that's okay. Alright, I now have that drive shaft installed, and now you can flip the car back over, but make sure that it doesn't fall out. Now the next thing to do is actually put in the transmission, and you can basically just slide that in like this, and then you need to flip it back over, and while making sure it doesn't fall out, bring it just like this and hold it in place. Now you need to back up the transmission a little bit so that you can put this drive shaft on to the shaft running out of the bottom of the transmission. Now it may take quite a few tries to get this shaft on to the transmission. But once you have it, all you need to do is slide this grub screw in, making sure that you don't pull the drive shaft off of the transmission. And now that's screwed in, and if you have the other drive shaft out, just repeat the same process. The next thing you want to do is to put in just one screw that attaches to the transmission, just to ensure that it doesn't fall out. So you can put in the screw either here or here, which is right next to the front skid plate. So I'm just going to put mine in on the left, but if you don't want to do that, it can go in on the right as well. And you just need to make sure that it matches up with the transmission, then just screw it in. But not all the way, just enough to make sure the transmission will stay in. Alright, now I have that in, and I can continue. So the next thing you want to do is to slide the motor onto the mount, just like this. And it should rotate fairly freely. Now what you just need to do is put the motor on, but then get a scrap of paper like this and slide it in between the spur and the pinion and spin the spur to the right, and just all you need to do is make sure that you have the gap set right, just like this. Keep the piece of paper in and take the screw that goes into the motor, put it in and hand tighten it, then tighten it with the large wrench. Okay, so now the next thing to do is install the gear cover, this piece. Now it's just going to slide right over the spur gear, and you'll tighten it with this screw. Mine's metal, but the one that comes with the car is black. And just screw it in while pressing down on the gear cover. And now soon it'll look just like this. Okay, so now you can open the left battery tray and slide the ESC in, then hook the motor up with the yellow wire going to the yellow, blue to blue, and white to white. Now you want to flip the car over once more, and then using the 2mm wrench, you want to unscrew the screw that you put in next to the skid plate before on the bottom. So that it'll look like this. Now, what most people would do from here is install the center skid plate in here, but I run a T-bone skid plate, so I'm not going to do that, but that would be the final step if you do so. And all you need to do is screw that in. Alright, so I hope you liked this video on how to install a transmission. If you liked it, please hit like, and if you didn't, please hit dislike. Either way is pretty helpful to me, so goodbye.